There's a kind of narcissism that nearly every people pleaser has, and it hides behind what you think of as kindness. If you're a nice guy or a people pleaser, you probably think your problem is being too nice. But the dark truth is you're too controlling. Constantly trying to manage how other people feel, how they see you, how situations work out. You're like a puppet master, trying to keep on top of everything. And that's why you're so exhausted all the time. You think that you're the one who has to control everyone and everything all the time. So today's episode is for people pleasers who are accidentally displaying narcissism traits, often without even realizing they're doing it. If you're the kind of person who's trying to be a good person all the time and yet you find that it's exhausting and you're frustrated and resentful that you're not getting reciprocal rewards for this goodness that you're putting out, like your karma doesn't work properly, this one's definitely for you. I'll give you a little hint right now. The reason you're not getting the rewards you want in life has got nothing to do with karma. You're getting exactly what you deserve. So when you think you're being kind and compassionate and helpful, a lot of the time what you're actually being is controlling and manipulative and annoying and even suffocating. You don't realize that this is how it comes across or how it's received, but you would if it was being done to you. You're essentially accidentally behaving narcissistically. Your behavior matches somebody who would use people pleasing as a control mechanism to dominate people and to get what they want. Your behavior often exactly aligns with that. And yet the story in your head is that you're being a good person, so you can't see that that's what's happening. And so, like with other narcissists, this is why people don't respect you and don't reciprocate your love and don't include you and don't seem to be loyal to you. And this is why you feel alone. Your behavior is actually off-putting. The terrible thing is what us nice guys and people pleasers do when we see that it's not really working, we double down on it. We think, oh, I'm not being nice enough. I'm not giving people enough pleasure. I'm not kind enough or funny enough or interesting enough, so I've got to ramp up what I'm doing. Which is like having a gambling strategy that loses. And the more you lose money, you just double down the money you're putting, as if that's going to somehow turn it around. After a while, the loneliness will build up. You feel disconnected, bitter, and maybe starting to feel a little hopeless and powerless because you just can't seem to figure out what you're supposed to be doing, what actually works. So, what if you could be kind without sacrificing yourself? What if your beliefs around what it means to be a good person are actually completely warped and holding you back? Imagine if you can make other people's lives better without having to put them first and without having to be hyper vigilant about their moods and being anxious about pleasing them. What if you being confident and generous in a different way is actually more effective? Imagine discovering that true kindness that doesn't care about whether you're respected or liked. It comes from that really confident, healthy place that makes people love you rather than just like you and tolerate you. Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, before we get into it, there's an objection I think a lot of people should have when they hear me use the word narcissism that I need to address. That word is a buzzword at the moment. A lot of people are using it as clickbait. It's one of those irresistible, trendy words. And nearly everyone using that word doesn't actually know what it means. Unlike most other creators, I've actually spent a lot of time working face to face with psychopathic personalities, including those who have narcissistic personality disorder, the official diagnosis of what a narcissist actually is. So when I'm talking about narcissism in this podcast, I actually know what I'm talking about. I'm not just using the word to describe someone who's a bit disagreeable or a little bit selfish or a little bit controlling. I'm talking about somebody whose entire personality is so absolutely focused on dominating others and being superior to them, so fragile, the ego so huge that all they think about is being superior. I'm not talking about someone who's just a little bit uncomfortable to be around. The reason I use that word is not because people pleasers actually have narcissistic personality disorder, but because they develop a coping mechanism, a persona, a way of life that so almost perfectly mirrors narcissistic personality disorder that it's hard to distinguish between the two. But where a true narcissist is coming from a much different place of selfishness and dominance and ego and fragility, the people pleaser is actually starting at a place where they're trying to be a good person and trying to make other people's lives better. And yet they've ended up at the same strategy. The reason why this topic is such a big deal to me is because this is the slap in the face that I got that really changed my nice guy trajectory. So when I started realizing that my so-called niceness, my pleasingness, my being a good person was identical, almost identical, to being a narcissist, to being a selfish psychopath with no compassion for other people, where the behavior was essentially the same, it was like getting kicked in the face. It was such a shock that my belief that I'm a good person, that belief that I clung to, that forced me to keep behaving the same way over and over again, essentially got shattered. And I am so glad I took that hit because I needed it. Like so many of my clients, so many of the people I work with, they're so embedded in a belief system that they cling to that they need to be smacked out of it. A lot of my coaching work is quite brutal in the early stages because they need to let go of the idea that they're a good person because they're not. Behaviorally, they're not. Intention wise, yes. Behavior, no. And that was the case for me. It was such a painful relief to realize, holy shit, I don't have to keep being like this because being like this sucks anyway. Not only am I not being a good person, it doesn't even get the results I'm trying to get anyway. So I'm safe to now abandon this whole belief system and try something new. So I want to give you guys the slap of holy shit, I'm not actually a good person. I'm needy, controlling, and manipulative, and I suffocate people with this. And they're just tolerating it because they're trying to be nice. Like, if I can give you that wake up call, you'll realize why your relationships aren't really working out and why you're stressed all the time and why socializing is so exhausting for you. And you can open up to this other way that's way more effortless, way more enjoyable, and much healthier, especially when it comes to relationships. So I'm not actually saying that you're a narcissist, because if that was true, this podcast would be pointless. I won't be able to affect you. And if you are a narcissist listening to this, hoping that you're not one, you'll find that by the end of the podcast, you won't change your behavior at all. I don't hold that against you. But if you're a people pleaser acting like a narcissist, you can change your behavior, and that's who I'm talking to today. So, as I said, this episode is very personal to me. I was like this for so long and so often, but I was also so good at it that I just constantly got approval and validation for being the way I was being, and that allowed me to overlook and dismiss critical evidence that something was wrong. You may have noticed some of these in your own life. People tolerated me and used me, seemed to like me and give me approval and validation, but they didn't behave like they loved me. There wasn't that sort of loyalty and reciprocation and compassion that you get with a loving relationship. It was more like I was the dancing bear, performing for everybody, making everyone feel good, and when they'd had what they needed from me, they just moved on. People would often subtly show annoyance and resistance to the pleasing I was trying to do, especially when I was trying to be funny and make them laugh or trying to be helpful. And I would overlook that subtle kind of, I don't want this reaction that I get from people because I'd actually dominate them into accepting whatever it was that I was doing and therefore be able to tell myself they must like it. For example, if I tell a joke and someone laughs, they must have liked me telling that joke. The idea that I'm annoying them because they're trying to concentrate on the lecture at university that we're sitting in right now, that didn't really occur to me, or I just overlooked that that was possible. There was a inconsistency in my reputation. I was clearly known as a good person. I'd seen lots of evidence of people telling others that I was a good person and telling me that I was a good person. And yet people often seem to forget to invite me to things or leave me out of events or not include me in conversations. So apparently I'm this great person, but I'm also not memorable or people don't put much effort into including me. I struggled with that dissonance. Like, how can I be both of those things? I was often sulking, resentful about the lack of reciprocation. I was one of those nice guys who thinks there's something wrong with me and the world doesn't work properly. Like, I'm being such a good person and I'm not getting the karma I deserve. There are others that are more specific, like I've been nice to that girl, so she should sleep with me. I wasn't quite specific like that. I'd be nice to that girl and then she would ghost me and I'd say, Universe, why don't you reward me for being a good person? And so I'd be sitting there sulking and miserable often and not realize, hey, if I was really a giving person, then why am I sulking about the lack of reciprocation? If I need reciprocation, is it really giving? I was failing to sort of notice that contradiction. And of course, some people actually directly confronted me about it, which is what I'm doing to you right now. They told me in no uncertain fashion that something was wrong. Most of the time, the feedback would be something like, you're too nice. And it'd be said in a compassionate way. Other times, people would be very direct, like your self-deprecating humor is pathetic. And I would either resist or ignore or be angry at them for giving me this feedback. Don't tell me I'm too nice, tell me what I should do right. And they were telling me what was wrong. I wasn't listening. I didn't think there was such a thing as too nice. They didn't know how to put it into words, but they were saying, look, something you're doing is off and we can see it. And I just refused to acknowledge how obvious this was. That they weren't saying this to other people that they loved. They were only saying it to me. One of the most common ways that this all played out was my relationship with women in my teens and early 20s, that particular period. I was quite often like the consigliere. I was the pseudo therapist that girls went to about their problems, often their problems with other men. So if a girl was struggling with her boyfriend or a guy she was dating, I was often that shoulder to cry on. I was that kind of pseudo gay friend you went to for advice. And I reveled in this role. I saw it as a kind of martyrdom. Like, I won't get the girl, but I will look after the girls. And the other guys will get them because life's unfair and karma doesn't work. But I'll at least be the good guy that they can come to with their broken hearts and get mended. And I had this whole kind of story in my head. This is why I literally called myself the nice guy before nice guy syndrome had even been called a thing. I spent a lot of time telling myself I was nice because I helped these women who I was secretly attracted to most of the time with their issues. But did I really help them? Is that what I was doing? Not so much. There were some cracks in just how kind I was being, which I overlooked completely. One thing, for example, is I often tended to portray the guy that they were with as being worse than me. I'd say things like, I would never do that to a girl, or if a girl was doing this, here's how I would respond differently. I was kind of like subtly or not so subtly highlighting that I'm better than these other guys, which was a very indirect sales pitch to like be with me instead of him, right? I wasn't really conscious of this strategy, but it was clear that I was trying to build up a picture in their mind as they went through heartbreak after heartbreak, like, hey, the good guy's right in front of you, you're missing out, which is not what a good guy would actually do. I often took over and dominated them with practical advice, guidance. I told them what to do. I tried to steer them. Often it wasn't just to like make them like me, but because them being upset bothered me and I tried to steer them in the direction where they would stop bothering me. Of course, that's not what I told myself. I told myself that I'm giving them what they need, and they would often say thank you, and then I'd get mad at them because they didn't follow my advice, and I wouldn't see that that was actually a kind of feedback for me. And this kind of thing, which was like, if I was really a kind, helpful person, I wouldn't actually be telling them what to do. The truth of telling them what to do is I was trying to make them dependent on me. Now, that was all subconscious, but what I was doing was creating a situation where they couldn't make decisions for themselves anymore. They had to come to me. And I was like the one that helped them break through. The idea that they could do this without me, that just didn't really occur to me. I'm like, why are you coming to me and telling me about your problems if you can solve them yourself? It didn't occur to me that sometimes people just like to talk about their problems and they can solve it themselves, but they also like to complain first. I just thought, hey, you've enlisted my help, so I'm going to guide you, and then I'm going to become this role in your life permanently. So essentially, I was trying to highlight the faults in other men to make myself look better. I was trying to make the girl dependent on me, so I was the only one she could go to for advice and decision making. And all of this was a very unsuccessful attempt to try and make them like me romantically. And if I couldn't get liked romantically, I would settle for the next best thing. And the next best thing was this. There was this time I was at my house. I had a party at my house, and there was two girls, and I always had a big friend group full of girls and boys. There was two girls there, and they came up to me and they said, "Dan, we've been talking, and we've decided you're our favorite guy in the group." Now, both of these were dating other guys in the group, right? So they're saying I'm the favorite, but they're actually with other guys, which again is more feedback for me that I missed. But that thing, them saying that was such a highlight moment of my life at the time that that's exactly what I wanted. Like, if I couldn't have the girls romantically, which I'd given up on, I will settle for being their favorite guy. That validation, I'm the best person in the group, right? So ultimately, all of the strategies that I was using with women were a very unsuccessful when it comes to dating and romance. So I settled for being the guy they think is better than all the other guys. And I told myself, this is validation that I'm a genuinely good person. This is a moral validation of my superiority to all the other guys out there who are selfish and unkind and cruel and inconsiderate and all these things I thought of other men as. The idea that I was all of those things, that didn't occur to me. I'm at the opposite end of that spectrum, I thought. So this is what happens to us. We're blind to the fact that we are the very thing we hate because we constantly get positive approval and validation, and we think that that is an accurate measure of who we're being. So if you've noticed that people seem to depend on you, seem to rely on you to make decisions, they require you to manage their emotions, they just in any way seem to need you, then this episode is probably for you, and you might not be the good person that you really think you are. So, I've made a pretty bold claim that people pleasing and narcissism is almost identical. Now I'm going to break down that claim. From the more scientific point of view, I'm going to help you understand why those things that you think of as good and nice are exactly what a narcissistic personality would do to control people. So once again, I'm not saying you have a narcissistic personality disorder necessarily, though maybe some of you listening to this do. For most of you, it's just you're going to recognize some of these patterns in yourself. And the more of them you recognize, the less of a good person you're actually being. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take the traits of NPD from the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistic Manual that psychiatrists and psychologists use, and I'm going to map those and mirror those onto common people-pleasing traits and behaviors. And you're going to see how it kind of translates from one to the other. They're not identical. They kind of play out in a very specific way, but they're very similar. The first one is a grandiose sense of self, what you might call the God complex. A narcissist sees themselves as superior to all other beings. Well, people pleasers have what I call the inept God complex. People pleasers think that they are responsible for everyone and everything, and that they are, in some way, a controlling factor in how everything goes and how everybody feels, which is the same as being grandiose. You think that you control all the variables of the universe. That's a God complex. The difference is, a people pleaser generally worries that they're an inept God, that they're not very good at this, that they're unsuccessful. They're supposed to control everyone and everything, but it doesn't work out the way it should most of the time, or at least some of the time. Whereas the narcissist will actually think everything's working out perfectly because they're awesome at it. The second trait is being preoccupied with fantasies of success. A narcissist spends a lot of time in their head imagining how awesome everything's going to go for them because of how awesome they are. People pleasers fantasize all the time too, about success. They spend more time fantasizing about everything working out than actually doing something about it. You'll notice if you're one of those chronically single nice guys, you'll fantasize about women all the time. And in those fantasies, the women love you and everything works out, and they're like some sort of Disney princess, and you're the prince. You'll fantasize about how you would talk to people if you could just talk like this, confronting people, standing up for yourself, everybody thinking you're awesome, When I was in a band, I used to fantasize about playing on stage as a rock star. If you have crushes all the time and one-itis, that's a form of a fantasy life that you're living in your head, fantasy relationships with real girls who don't actually have that relationship with you. So that fantasizing thing is basically the same for both narcissists and people pleasers. Narcissists have a belief that they are unique and special. They are one of a kind, not just one in a million, just a superior unit of one, separate from the human race. People pleasers believe that they are the one who must be there to help others. They are the one who must manage everyone's emotions. It's the same. They think that they are special. Quite often, they also have what Mark Manson calls negative entitlement, which is you believe you're entitled to punishment. So you think that you're being unfairly targeted by the universe. Like everyone else is getting all the girls, and you're the best person, you're still not getting them. It's like you're being specially bullied and getting the worst results despite being the best person. All of this is a belief that you're unique and special beyond anybody else. You're this one of a kind person with a very special set of circumstances. Whereas narcissist thinks those special set of circumstances are positive in their favor, you probably think of them as negative. Either way, you're both thinking of yourselves as being the special thing, when in reality, you're just another person. A narcissist requires excessive adoration. They need validation and approval from others all the time. Sometimes they get it as being contrarian, like controlling people and affecting people negatively is a form of validation, like I affect you as validation. Regardless, they can't get by without this. If they were a car, this would be petrol, right? They need this. Well, what happens to a people pleaser when they don't get approval and validation? They fall to pieces. They need it just as much as well. That's their petrol. Most people pleasers and nice guys have no idea whether or not they're being a good person until somebody else says so. If you're a people pleaser, quite often you think, oh, I'm a good person until somebody disagrees and gets upset with you, and you're like, oh, I must be wrong about that. You're dependent completely on the validation and approval from other people, just like a narcissist. Narcissists have a massive sense of entitlement. They deserve everything. They deserve the best. They deserve more than others. People pleasers keep score. They sulk, they get resentful, bitter, worried when people aren't reciprocating, when they're not getting what they deserve. So essentially, it's kind of the same. Well, a narcissist will think, I deserve everything because I'm amazing. People pleaser thinks more like, I've earned this. There's a reward that I've earned from being a good person. I've paid my dues. Where's my reward? Very transactional relationship, which is why you're not really a giving person. Because if it was really giving, you wouldn't be looking for what you're going to get in return. So the fact that you keep score, you notice like I've been so kind to them and they're not being kind to me. That's unfair. They're a bad person. I mean, it's pretty much a mimicry of a narcissist thinking they deserve everything. Narcissists are exploitative. They will find your weak points, they will find leverage. They are constantly looking to see what can I get out of this person. It's a very psychopathic trait where everything is a transaction. And not just a transaction, more like a pillaging. When a psychopathic personality meets someone, they think, what can I use you for? How much can I squeeze out of you before you're empty? And that's all they care about. You are just an asset to them. People pleaser does the same thing in a much more subtle way where they will use hypervigilance to figure out the truths about somebody and push and maneuver them, force them through things like guilt tripping, excessive giving and kindness, and kind of using their goodness as a manipulation. So they exploit people's weaknesses just the same. If you notice, for example, that someone's particularly susceptible to flattery, you'll often flatter them. You'll give them lots of compliments. If someone's needy for advice, you'll give them advice. You'll notice that you adapt to kind of embed yourself in someone's life. And even when the nice stuff doesn't work, you will use the nasty stuff, just like a narcissist. You will guilt trip people. You'll drop hints that they owe you something, that something was difficult for you. You'll play the burning martyr and make sure everyone knows how much you sacrifice so that they feel like they need to reciprocate. You'll use stonewalling and sulking. You'll give people the cold shoulder when they're not reciprocating, but play that covert contract game, make them try and guess what they owe you. Or you'll be passive aggressive. So you're not really as nice as you think you are. If you're totally honest with yourself and you looked at what you did to people when they didn't reciprocate and you built up resentment, you'd see that you drop the nice manipulation pretty quickly and move on to the nastier stuff. This is not true of all people pleasers. There are some that are just like endless niceness with no exceptions. But even that is just their best strategy that they could think of. It's not because they're a particularly good person. It's because they think this is what works and they think they deserve bad treatment. So when they get treated badly by others, they think, oh, I can't punish them for it. I'm such a bad person. I'm special and unique in a negative way. So this is just my comeuppance. Narcissists lacks empathy. They have no conscience. They don't give a shit how you feel unless they can use it to their advantage, but they certainly don't feel what you feel. They don't feel sorry for you. They don't feel bad about what they've done. Now, people pleasers don't really have this one exactly. What people pleasers really have is the ability to be highly empathetic, but instead of using that for good, they use that to figure out how to get approval and validation from people. It's kind of like empathy is a neutral weapon. It depends what you use it for. And people pleasers are kind of self-obsessed. They're just like me all the time, while telling themselves they're thinking nothing about themselves and just about other people. So a people pleaser is usually very good at reading people quite accurately. They can sense a shift in mood and displeasure in people, but they just use that to predict the best tactic they can use on that person to get approval and validation. Though they'll be telling themselves, here's how I can be kind to that person, here's how I can cheer them up or calm them down, not realizing this is all for you. This is in your best interest, not theirs. So we have huge conscience. In fact, we feel guilty all the time about being bad and not being good enough. Which also narcissists have, by the way. They're constantly worried that they're not good enough while also being superior. Kind of paradox that they live in. But where we don't actually believe that we're superior to others, we still don't actually really use our empathy for them. We don't try to help them the way they actually need to be helped. We just try to help them feel a way about us that we prefer. Narcissists are very envious. Not just envious of others, they believe others are envious of them. They think the world is just a system of envy and jealousy, that people are constantly comparing and being jealous of each other, which isn't too far from the truth, to be fair. People pleasers are always comparing themselves to others and comparing people to people. Now, they don't often think that people are envious of them, but they do think they should be. I think people, if they knew how good I was as a person, they'd want to be more like me, they think, which is very, very similar to thinking others are envious of them. It's just one step removed. You think that people don't realize they should be envious. But they're constantly comparing, constantly thinking others have it better and wondering why others are getting the results that they don't get, and while also thinking you deserve more. It's the victim hero point of view. It's like, yeah, everyone's getting the stuff I should be getting because I'm a good person, which is the same envy system a narcissist lives in. If a narcissist is envious of you, it's because they believe you don't deserve the reward, it should be theirs. But they don't think they need to do anything to earn it. They just think they're superior, they're godlike. Job done. People pleaser just has an extra layer of I've earned it, an extra justification of why they deserve everything. And of course, the final main trait for narcissism is arrogance, superiority, this attitude. Now, people pleasers don't display this as obviously. You would never say a people pleaser is arrogant or a nice guy is arrogant. But what you'll notice if you pay attention is that they outdo other people with their goodness, which makes other people look worse. They're the first one to answer the question in the class. It makes it look like everyone else isn't participating. They offer to help you move house before anybody else helps, so it looks like they're more helpful than others. They put more time and effort into you than your boyfriend does. And they do this thing where they show through acts of goodness and kindness that you would never call arrogance, that they're actually better than other people, which is arrogance. Arrogance is thinking that you're better than others. So they're constantly trying to demonstrate that they're better than others in such an indirect way that you could never call them out for believing that. In fact, they appear to be so humble and modest that you'd feel bad for calling them arrogant. And yet, arrogant is exactly what they are. They do believe they're better than other people. So every one of these traits, whether you're a narcissist or a people pleaser, has this one thing in common: controlling other people. Specifically, controlling what other people think and feel about you. It can be very indirect, like use lots of kindness and everything so that they'll associate you with kindness, making them laugh so they associate you with having a good time. So it's not like I'm directly saying you must like me. I'm just making being around me so pleasant that you'll eventually assume that I'm the thing that's making the pleasantness happen, so you like me, not just what I'm doing. All of it is control. All of it is manipulation. You have to stop fucking kidding yourself that this is really goodness and kindness. Yeah, it overlaps with what really good and kind people do. There are things that you do that match what a generous person would do and match what a truly kind, empathetic person would do. But it's like a photocopy. You're using that to get approval and validation. They're just doing it. They're just being generous. They're not looking for a return on that investment. They don't even care if anyone notices. They don't even care if anybody fucking appreciates it. You do. You very much care. In fact, that's one of the main decision-making factors for you is how much is this going to pay out for me, right? And that's the difference. That's where you take kindness and goodness and you overlap it with narcissism. And there you're stuck in the middle. You're not a narcissist, nor are you truly kind and generous. You're this kind of combo, which is very unhealthy and very ineffective. So the narcissist tries to control people by dominating them. Nice guy tries to control people by pleasing them. That's the key difference, but the behaviors are often the same. And we're going to explore that difference in detail. I'm going to help you see that you're not actually a narcissist. It's just you've kind of accidentally stumbled on the same strategy. And by the way, if you want to know more about what a true narcissist looks like and thinks like and feels, I've done an interview with one. If you comment narcissism below this podcast, wherever it's posted, or email me, dan@brojo.org. I'll send you the interview with a narcissist and you'll listen to what he does to control people and feel very uncomfortable because it'll sound exactly like what you do. So let's have a little look now at why we're like this. How have we come to a place where, starting from trying to be a good person who loves other people, how have we ended up being a fucking narcissist, right? What went wrong? Let's have a look at it. I think the key insight I want you to take away is control is about safety. Right? Safety, the urge to be safe, that motive is what leads us to be controlling. Because the only way to be safe is to control the variables, to protect yourself from harm. So essentially what you're doing is controlling people to protect yourself. Okay, you're trying to cause reassuring outcomes or prevent harmful outcomes, which is a completely different motive from the narcissist, essentially. But you've ended up with the same strategy. So mostly, like all things that comes from childhood, something in your childhood or early teen years made you feel unsafe, and you found that people pleasing and nice guy behaviors managed to control those variables for you. So you started managing how other people think and feel because that protected you from something. A very common one is having an emotionally unstable parent, right? Or a parent who only loved you on conditions. You learn to meet those conditions and get their love, or you learn to please and appease an unstable parent to reduce the amount of harm that they did. It can also be bullying. So you found that there's a certain way of being that was cool, that fit in with the group, or at least reduce the amount that they were mean to you. And so you started to manage the way they see you and the way they feel so that they would treat you better. Right? This is especially prevalent in high school. When you get into dating and romance, you start to realize that certain traits get positive approval from your preferred type of partner. And you failed to identify that positive approval is not the same as attraction. Because you didn't want anything that had tension with it. So because you're conflict avoidant as a safety mechanism, you developed a way of getting positive approval and validation from your peers without the tension and conflict that comes with something like attraction. So you just found a way to have safe connections with people. So the main factor it really comes down to specifically is emotional control. We're trying to control how people feel when they're in our presence or when they're thinking about us. That's what we subtly figured out as children. We might never have really thought about it this way. I never thought about it like that. I was never directly thinking like I need to control how that person feels emotionally. It's much more instinctual. I'd get a sense of what emotion a person was having. I'd identify whether that's in the safe or the unsafe range, and I'd know how to move them from unsafe to safe. If someone's angry, I'd know how to move them to calm. If they're sad, I'd know how to move them to happy. Basically, I was just trying to get to happy and calm from whatever position they're in. If they're disappointed, I tried to change their minds so that they accepted the results. If they're in conflict with someone else, I tried to moderate that so they're both calm. It was just always this nudge towards this very narrow band of emotions that I felt comfortable with from the great range of emotions that I didn't. Everything I did was essentially trying to nudge them from one to the other because that's where I felt safe. So we're in this weird control system where they actually control us because their emotions decide how well we're doing. And we can't control our own emotions, so we have to control theirs to control ours, you see? So the reason we're so controlling with everybody else is that is our version of emotional regulation. And you take some kid, they can't emotionally regulate. So when their dad is being scary, they can't not be scared. They don't know how to deal with that. But if they can make their dad not scary, then their fear goes away. So they're like, oh, so I have to control them to control emotions. It's like my emotions have levers on other people. So I pull the lever over there and then my emotion changes to what I need, right? If I'm anxious, I just do something over here, they behave differently and my anxiety goes away. And this is the fucking warped system that we're working with. This is what leads us to narcissistic behaviors. Is like I have to control others to control myself. I don't know how to control myself directly. I haven't even considered that as an option. You'll even notice that, like, if you're a loner or you're alone, that you'll still moderate your emotions with external measures, scrolling on your phone, alcohol and drugs, binging, gambling. You still like look to the external world to manage how you feel. Like that's the system you've been living in. And that's maybe one of the main breakthroughs I want you to have today is that's not the only way things work. You can become self-regulated. And that this huge effort you're putting into making everybody else fucking happy is just you trying to make yourself happy. And you can cut out the middleman and just work on that. But that's maybe for another day. So it's like this garden. We're trying to create this place of peace for ourselves. But we have to weed the garden, we have to control the plants because we think that's where the peace comes from. And again, we develop this God complex belief because we see that it actually does work. I do control the way other people feel, or so it seems. I make people laugh, I calm people down, I cheer up sad people. My dad's being really scary and wild, and I do all the stuff that impresses him and he relaxes. It's like, okay, I really am the center of everything. And this is where we get a kind of arrested development. That self-centeredness is supposed to change about the age of 9 or 10. As the brain develops, you realize, oh, actually, other people make decisions independently from me. I'm not actually the center of everything. Before that, a child really believes they're the center of everything. So if you're above the age of 9 and you still think that you influence everything and that the way people feel is directly related to you, then you have not developed. You haven't seen the truth, which is their feelings and thoughts have taken their whole life to build up to this moment. It's got fucking nothing to do with you. But you start to feel like if someone else feels bad, I either caused it or am responsible for fixing it. Either way, it's my job, right? This is my problem, not theirs. So you become very hyper vigilant. You take everything personally. You leap to solutions. You're anxious. You're fake. You're constantly behaving like someone who believes I am the mastermind. I'm the puppet master of everyone around me. If someone's sad, it's because I didn't make them happy, and I should. Someone's angry, it's because I didn't calm them down. This idea that, like, this is your job, that is what leads to narcissistic traits, because that's the main thing we have in common with the narcissist. We think we control everything and that it's our job to do so. Of course, there are dire consequences for getting this wrong. We have to make sure everyone feels good, or otherwise big bad things happen. Translation, I feel upset if other people aren't feeling good. So what we think of as things going wrong is really just us having uncomfortable emotions as we witness other people live. For example, you didn't give someone some advice and then they did the thing and there was a fuck up and they're really disappointed and you're just like, oh my God, it's a tragedy because you're sad about them being disappointed. When actually they're fine. Nothing bad fucking happened to them. Or nothing that's got anything to do with you anyway. But you start to go like, being wrong is bad. And being wrong means not controlling people's feelings adequately to control your own, right? So anytime you're upset because somebody else is upset, wrong, you think. Broken, bad thing just happened. And this leads to an addiction to getting things right, to constantly being in control, constantly keeping yourself and everyone else in a narrow band of comfortable emotion. And that anything outside of that is a great failure. You become obsessed with it. By the time you hit early 20s, you're thinking about it all the time. It's just constantly emotive behind nearly everything you do. As soon as you're socializing, you're like, all right, let's get everyone into that nice narrow band of emotions that I prefer. Right. This is where perfectionism comes from. The reason that you get so upset about things not going exactly to plan is because you're terrified of wrongness and addicted to rightness. Doing it all, being unable to delegate, never backing down from a problem, just going, fuck, I'll just leave it because it doesn't matter. You'll notice if you're a people pleaser that your to-do list just includes anything you could think of as being a problem that needs to be solved. Right? You're not like, hey, most problems can be left alone because fuck, it's not my job. You're like, as soon as somebody's upset, that's my job. As soon as something's a bit not perfect, that's my job. You do very little sort of importance or hierarchy management of like, do I really need to do that? Does that matter? Is that really my problem? Shouldn't she be dealing with it? You don't do that. You're just like, I saw it, so it's mine. And of course, that need to maintain a flawless reputation. This idea like I am being monitored all the time and judged, and whether or not people love me comes down to the last move I made. I cannot get anything wrong or the love is taken away permanently. I can never disappoint my boss. I can never make my partner angry. I can never be boring to my friends. Like, it'll all come crashing down, this house of cards, like this conditional love that you think you get, where you just have to be on your game all the time or you'll lose it all, despite evidence that that does not happen, or it only happens with people who are toxic and unhealthy. You still keep this up because you're addicted. You also get to this point where you can just no longer trust people to handle themselves because you've seen so much evidence that they appear to need you to do it for them, even though you manufactured that situation. So, despite evidence that 8 billion people are living their lives without you just fine, you know, some of them are doing better than others, but really, most people on the planet, most people throughout history have gotten through their lives without your intervention. You still got this idea that they can't handle it. They can't do it without you. You don't realize you've created a self-fulfilling prophecy because you create codependent relationships. You impose your help on people, you impose your emotional management and regulation on people to the point where they do seem to need you because you've disabled them carefully over time without realizing you're doing it. And then you're just like, well, see, look at her. She got all upset about that little thing again. As soon as I'm not there, she just loses it. As if that's a problem that needs to be solved, by the way. Then you're like, so why could I trust someone to leave? Like, why can't I just let my partner figure something out on her own, even if she gets it wrong? Why do I have to intervene? That's because you suspect that you'll need it, and there's no point in waiting. You may as well jump in now because you're going to have to jump in later anyway. So you've created a world where it looks like you're needed, and you're ignoring the clear evidence that you're not. So this is why we do this. This is why we end up following all these narcissistic controlling behaviors, the obsession with emotional regulation and control. Now let's have a look at why it fails to work. Why you're listening to this podcast because your life isn't as brilliant as it should be for being such a good person. I want you to open your mind to the possibility that the karmic cycle in the world is not broken, that the universe is not unfairly holding back rewards from you, that you are, in fact, getting exactly what you deserve, exactly what you've earned, just not what you thought it was going to be. You thought you earned kindness and love and success because you're such a good person. Well, what if what you're getting is an indication of who you really are? Let's have a look at why people pleasing doesn't actually please people and doesn't get you what you want. First and foremost, humans have emotions. Yeah, it's not an error. All of them do. All of them. An emotion is not a problem. It's not something that can be solved. You can't solve someone's anger. You can calm them down with all this manipulation, and then another thing happens and they're angry all over again. Emotions just come and go. That's part of being a fucking primate, being a mammal. It's the very definition, really, of being a mammal. We're warm-blooded. We have emotions. We're guided by emotions. Neuroscience would argue that emotions actually make all our decisions for us. Trying to solve emotions is like trying to control the weather. It's like trying to prevent rain from happening. Imagine if, like, every time it rained, you got mad at yourself, like you'd failed. It's like, oh, I was trying to keep it sunny. Like, so disappointed. I'm such a fucking failure. Now, that would be insane, wouldn't it? Then why is it, if that's insane, why is it a human having an emotion which is dependent on all the variables that have ever occurred to them in their entire life? Why is it insane to think you can't control that, right? Like, emotions and the weather are essentially identical in terms of how they're created. It's the variables of the environment. It's everything that's ever come before bouncing off everything else and leading to this one particular thing. For example, if I get angry right now, that goes all the way back to my childhood. How my beliefs were formed, what I think is right and wrong, what I prefer and disprefer. So it goes into my genetics, my preferences, which means it goes into my parents, their whole life, and all the way back to the beginning of life. It's taken billions of years for me to get to this moment and be angry. And then you're going to be upset with yourself that you didn't stop me getting angry? That is insane. So that's why that doesn't work. You can't control the weather. You can't control people's emotions. You can give yourself a sense that you had some control over people's emotions, but then you'll notice they just had that emotion again later. If anything, you doubled it because you suppressed it the first time, and so it came back the second time twice as strong. Right? Every person that you've ever worked with is emotionally unstable. You'll notice you haven't made them more emotionally stable. You can do that when they're in your presence, but then they lose it twice as much when you're not around. You've just made it worse, not better. The second reason is that emotions are not feedback. Your goodness as a person is not measured by how somebody else feels right now, even if that's about you. You could be a good person and it upsets somebody. Them being upset is not counter evidence to your goodness. You can be a bad person and please people. Happens all the time. I mean, con artists generally make people feel good, right? As they're stealing from them and ruining their lives. So the idea that your morality is somehow objectively measured by the way people feel, so you have to control how people feel, that makes no sense at all. Quite the opposite. So just because someone's laughing at your joke, it doesn't mean that you're a good person. Just because someone's upset with your boundaries doesn't mean you're a bad person. There's no relationship between the two because your moral code is not something that will be emotionally tolerable to everybody else. They won't even interpret it correctly. You could be a good person and somebody thinks you're bad because they misinterpreted what you're doing. And therefore they'll have an emotional reaction to who they think you are rather than who you actually are, which is true all the time, by the way. You might think someone's laughing so they think you're funny, but they actually misinterpreted your joke, and that's why they think it's funny. If they knew the real joke, they would think it was offensive. You have no fucking idea how they've perceived you. So the idea that the way they feel measures how good a person, that is a fictional delusion. And that's why it's a terrible system to try and figure out who you should be and how good you should be and what goodness is. One of the main reasons that being narcissistically people-pleasing disconnects you from other people is because people aren't safe to be themselves around you. You'll always try to fix them. They're not allowed to be upset and confused and lost and angry. They're not allowed to be disappointed because the reaction they'll get from you will be so suffocating and controlling that they don't feel safe to show you that reaction most of the time. Or they're a toxic person who uses the appearance of that emotion to get you to do things. Either way, you are not going to attract healthy, confident people into deep connections with you. You often wonder, like, how come that girl is with that jerk and not with me? Well, because she can express shit to him. She can't do it with you because you'll just turn into a therapist. When she goes, "Oh my God, I feel so sad," to him, he's just like, "Yeah, that sucks." He doesn't do anything about it, which is actually what she needs. You're not a better person than him, you're worse. Okay, he's not a jerk, you're the jerk. All right? And I know that hurts, but it hurt me too. I constantly saw a woman tell me I was a great person, then go be with another guy who I thought was less than me. The idea that he was actually better than me did not occur. I mean, sure, I say, oh, it's because he's more handsome and because he's funnier or cooler than me. No, it's because she doesn't have to fucking moderate herself with him. She's free with him in a way that she could never be with you because you suffocate her. If someone had told me that, I'd have been like, oh, that's why, right? So yeah, they have big arguments sometimes because she's allowed to be angry with him. He won't suffocate her with rationality until she feels guilty about being angry. He'll just let her be angry. He'll be angry back. They're allowed to do that. They're not allowed to do that with you, though. So even when they are with you, they're not loyal. So only one person needs to come along and give them more emotional freedom, and boom, ghosted, cheated on, forgetting you fucking exist. Even when non-romantic, you'll notice your friends will often pass you up for a better deal. That better deal is someone that they're more free with. Okay? Yeah, pleasing is nice, but you notice we'll go to a comedy show, but we won't live there, right? It's something we only want a little bit of, and then we want to get back to real life. We don't want to be around someone who's always helpful, always kind, always funny. It's fucking boring if nothing else. We want some range in our life. So that's the problem, like, oh, and people are ghosting me. They don't appreciate how good you are. No, they just can't breathe, mate. They need to go somewhere where they can breathe, where they can have a range of feelings and experiences, and not just the happy, nice thing that you think everyone wants. They don't, mate. Horror movies are popular, thrillers are popular, dramas are popular. People want a range. They don't just want to watch a nice comedy where nothing bad happens to anybody. And that's the kind of world you're trying to create for them. They're sick of it. You're also not as devious as you like to think you are, okay? You like to think that everyone believes you're just a good person. People pleasing is fucking obvious. You know it because you see it when someone's doing it to you. When someone's being kind to you and you know they're just trying to score a favor, you know it. Well, guess what? Everyone knows when you're doing it as well. They can feel that this is transactional. They can feel the manipulation underneath. They might not be able to put it into words. They might be a bit unsure about themselves. Oh, he's such a good person. Why do I feel off? I see a lot of like TikTok videos and stuff. Girls saying that they couldn't stay with the guy. He's so great, he's so nice, I just couldn't stay with him. And these girls get so much criticism, like, oh, nothing pleases you. So no, I don't criticize those girls at all because what they're saying is there was something off about how good he was. He was too good, too nice. It can't be legit. And they're right, it's not. Even the kindest person in the world gets fucking angry sometimes, disagrees sometimes, has boundaries. When there's none of that, you get suspicious. When someone's just endlessly good without any fucking deviations, you're like, this can't be real because you understand how the human brain works. Nobody's like this. Only someone being fake could be like that. So people know you're doing this. And this was such a big, like, painful revelation for me. I thought I was going undercover. I thought I was flying under the radar, that nobody had picked it out. I had one guy in particular, I won't tell a long story, but he called me out on it. He said he didn't like me because I was a people pleaser. I'm like, you fucking knew? You know? It's like, thought that was the best kept secret in the world. It's like, what do you mean? Dude, everybody knew. Just some people tolerated it. And that's all they did. They tolerated it. Like I said, they often forgot to invite me to stuff. They weren't seeking me out as the first person to spend time with most of the time. So there were signs there that they knew something was off. They didn't mind it that much, but they certainly weren't in love with it. They couldn't be safe with it. And people don't appreciate covert contracts. They don't appreciate receiving a loan instead of a gift. I have that in my life. I won't say who, but there's some people who quite often will give us food, you know, and then later on they ask for favors. We start to realize the food is like a loan. They're not really giving us food. They're setting it up as like a guilt trip. So I don't like receiving food from them anymore because I know it's not a gift. I know it's got a fish hook in it. And when I finish biting into this bait, I'm going to get hauled in a certain direction with emotional manipulation. People can feel that you're doing that. Even when you don't know you're doing it, they can feel it. They know that this niceness comes with a price, an expectation, that there will be sulking and resentment if they don't deliver. Or they know that you feel that way and they don't give a shit. They're just going to use you. Right? They'll play the transactional game just fine. So you don't end up with healthy people being loyal to you. You just end up with fucked up people in your life. So reciprocation and respect is going to be very unlikely as you slowly surround yourself with unhealthy people. Not everyone in your life will be toxic and ironically, you're going to attract narcissistic personalities and psychopaths because you're like easy prey for them. But you'll also just attract very damaged people because a confident person doesn't enjoy being around a people pleaser. They find it suffocating. They just find it unenjoyable. They like to be around real people who are confident. And so they will ghost you and abandon you and keep a distance from you. So the people who are close to you, and I hate to say this, but it's just the truth. You have to have another look at just how well they're doing psychologically. Okay, because the chances are they're as fucked up as you are in different ways. All right. I used to, I mean, I've had great friends who've lasted a long time, but I wouldn't pretend that they're emotionally healthy, right? They're better now. Some of them have kind of developed at the same pace that I have over the years, and they've stayed my friends, and others just haven't, and they've fallen by the wayside. But when I look at the kind of friends and connections I had over the years, a lot of them were fucked up people. Some of them very fucked up, especially the women in my life. Like the girls who were actually attracted to me when I was like this, a small few, they were insane. I mean, I have to say it, they were insane. And the idea, like, this is where a lot of misogyny comes from with nice guys who get into red pill and stuff. It's because all the women in their life are quite unstable emotionally and quite mentally unwell, and they think that that's what all women are like. It's like, no, that's just the woman who will come near you. All right, the healthy, confident women who are great to be around and really wonderful and autonomous. They don't want anything to do with you, mate. You're never going to meet them. All right. And so you eventually surround yourself with users or abusers or very unwell people who are going to drain you. And that is feedback. That's feedback for you. If you're not surrounded by confident go-getters who set boundaries well and take care of themselves and show the full range of emotions, that's because they don't want to be around someone like you. You got to remember, like, disrespect is the key here. Kind people get respected. In fact, kindness is often rated as secretly the most attractive trait, romantically and platonically. That basically being a genuinely kind person is a ticket to an amazing social life. People pleasing is not genuine kindness because of the fishhook, the expectation of a return on your investment, even if it's not directly from this person, just from the universe for being a good person. That fishhook makes all the difference. A genuinely kind person enjoys the gift of giving so much that they don't actually want a reward. There's nothing external that they need. I was actually watching a show last night, From, it's called. And a guy's trying to help a girl, and he's clearly not a people pleaser guy, and he's trying to help this girl. And he said, look, let me do some of the cool shit. What he's saying is like, this is for me, not for you. I'm not trying to be a good person. I want to be a guy who like gets to do some stuff sometimes. Like, give me something that makes me feel useful. And that's the irony of true kindness is you're like, this is actually for me, not for you. It's great that you benefit from it. That's part of the reward for me is that you benefit from it. But I don't need you to like me for this. This isn't to win you over. I'm not going to pretend that this is selfless. This is actually self-centered. I'm doing what makes me feel good about myself. Just so happens that that works out for everybody. That's what kindness looks like. Because you're doing like, I'm pretending that this is self-sacrifice, that this hurts me to help you, so that you feel sorry for me and like me more, and somehow that will make you attracted to me and want to be my loyal friend. Like, that's just a worlds apart. Okay, it's very off-putting for people. So that's why you don't get respect. A kind person, a truly kind person will get respect. So if you think you're kind, but people don't respect you, it's because you're not actually kind. The main reason this backfires, probably, is that it comes from a general functional core belief, dysfunctional core belief, really, that it's possible to get through life without being uncomfortable. Life is, by definition, uncomfortable. discomfort, resistance, entropy. This is the rules that we're playing with. This is the game. So you've got a system that's designed to prevent discomfort in a world that guarantees discomfort. How could such a system work? Okay. You're not playing by the rules. That's not going to work. You can't win that game. It is built into the human condition for us to be dissatisfied, disappointed, uncomfortable. It's actually one of the main reasons for our survival. If we were too comfortable and happy all the time, we'd just die off, right? We wouldn't be dealing with the threats and challenges of living. We have to constantly be like, oh, that's not right. I've got to fix that. Like, we've got to be a bit about stuff. This is why billionaires aren't satisfied, right? Because there's nothing you can do externally to your world that will cause permanent satisfaction. The brain is wired to become dissatisfied. That's why it's pointless to chase money like that. It's like you can have all the money in the world. Look at Elon Musk. Guy's still not fucking happy, right? We can't be. So you're trying to implement a system that causes a permanent state of comfortable range of emotions in a world that prevents you from doing that. Of course, that's going to backfire. You must accept the trade-offs. One of the trade-offs is being truly kind, generous, giving is difficult emotionally, not easy. If you find it easy to be kind and giving, you're probably not doing it, right? Like, give you an example. Holding an intervention for a drug addict is so emotionally uncomfortable and yet so powerfully helpful for that drug addict. That's what giving looks like. You should be squirming. You know, throwing coins at a homeless person, that doesn't help them. Sitting down next to them, ignoring the smell and talking to them about who they are and what's going on and giving them some real love, that's hard to do. That's what actual kindness looks like. You jumping on someone and solving their problems for them, easy. You genuinely like allowing them to figure it out and like getting frustrated as you watch them get it wrong, but knowing that that's the learning process and just guiding them gently but not doing it for them, that's hard. So if you actually want to be a kind person, you have to accept the trade-off is you have to be uncomfortable emotionally a lot of the time. The reward comes from knowing that you're a good person, not from the actual acts. The acts are difficult. And lastly, especially for you guys, attraction requires tension. And your whole game is to reduce tension. And that's why things don't work out for you romantically very well. And that's why you're not polarizing and respected. That's why people don't admire you even though they like you. But you're not interesting unless there's tension. You know, when we watch a movie, we're not like, man, I hope nothing happens to that guy. We're like, oh no, that person might happen. Oh no, the fucking fight. Oh, explosion. We want tension. We want up and down. It's like, oh, it's working out. Oh my God, it didn't work out. Oh, he's the betrayal guy. Oh, he turned out to be the hero. We love that up and down. That's why we watch movies. You don't watch movies where nothing happens because we enjoy tension. That's what we find interesting. It's what we're attracted to. So you got to think if you're a movie, what's it like watching? Is it just this bland monotone thing? Like, why would someone be attracted to that? Think, oh, girls should like me because I'm a good person. Mate, good's one of the criteria. That's not a hall pass. And you're not even good anyway. You're just not tense to be around, which is nice occasionally. Like occasionally we're hot and we need a cool glass of water, but we don't want to just be chugging water all day, right? Where's the rest of you? Where's your range? Because it's there. If you're being real, it would come out. They want to see the anger, disgust, tiredness, as well as the happiness and excitement and coolness and all the things. They want to see all the things. And somebody will like that whole recipe just the way it is, but you hide that recipe. And so what you get is the desperately thirsty people who need to live in an oasis, the people who have so much chaos and crap in their life that they have to keep coming back to you to get relief. And you can imagine what kind of person that's like. Well, you don't need to imagine, they're your friends. So of course, I've got to say at this point, if all of this is hitting home for you, and you'd like to make the transition from being a narcissistic people pleaser by accident into being confidently generous and enjoying the full range of life and being loved rather than just liked and respected rather than used, get in touch, dan@brojo.org. We'll have a coaching session. The first one's completely free. I'll help you break out of this and find a better life. So let's move on to some solution talk now. Let's talk about how to behave differently, how to think differently, how to get out of this fucking swamp and to stop being narcissistic. You have to embrace the thing you're terrified of, which is letting go of whatever it is you think you are, this good person. Letting go of being the guy who controls everything. Just wiping the slate clean to zero and just going, you know what, that whole system was fucked. Even though I dedicated decades to it, it's time to pull out of that investment, cut my losses, start over again, and maybe have a second half of my life that's good. And you got to ask yourself that scary question: if I'm not the nice person, the good person, the funny person, then who am I? If I don't have to focus entirely on providing value to others to regulate their emotions, what do I do with my life? What do I spend my time on? How do I behave socially if I'm not doing that? Who the fuck am I? It's a hard question to answer, right? It's actually my favorite one. Like, a lot of people come to me for coaching and they start with these very surface level things like I'm struggling with dating, or, I don't know how to confront my boss and so on. It's actually my favorite question because a lot of people come to me for coaching with these surface level things. I mean, it doesn't feel like surface level to them, but they're really struggling with dating, love, and connection. They don't know how to confront their boss. They've got toxic family who trigger them all the time. They think that's the problem. And what I love is to coach them as quickly as possible down to the question of who the fuck am I, really? Because that's the real problem. That's the thing that's like you got to work your way towards and realize that's at the core of all this. You've built up an entire persona based on people pleasing and controlling people. And if controlling people is no longer the goal, it wipes everything clean. And you got to figure out what was underneath this. Before I got conditioned and programmed into being this way, who was I? And there'll be little glimpses, especially from childhood, where like most of it was still there before it got really conditioned and controlled. Little things where you just did what you wanted and said what you felt, and maybe an interest in art or whatever. Like these little things as indication of who you might have become if people hadn't put you in a position where you felt unsafe. But you need to accept that this journey will take you to that horrible question of who am I, and looking at a blank piece of paper in your mind, just going, fuck, I don't even know. I don't know who I am. But if you can accept that chasm, that void of certainty, just go, okay, I don't know who I am. I'm starting over. Then you can do the work. If you're like, no, I'm going to stick with at least some of what I am, I refuse to give it up, then you're just going to end up, it's like doing kombucha. Like you'll just take that starter away and it will just grow another one. You're just going to end up being a different type of people pleaser because you won't let go of the core stuff of controlling people. I remember seeing a interview with a psychopath, and the person was kind of asking who she is, what her personality, her true self is. And she said, there isn't one. I'm the gas that fills the vessel. So she'll take the shape of whatever it is she needs to be the shape of, but she has no shape herself. She's just this gas that floats around. If she needs you to be, if you need her to be a milk bottle, she'll take that shape. If you need her to be a horse, she'll look like a horse, but she isn't actually a thing herself. And that's what it will feel like. If you take away this need to control people and manage their emotions and care about what they think, you'll feel like there's nothing left over because you've just been that gas that fills the void. You just taken the shape that they needed you to take in order to get good reactions, and you haven't figured out what your true shape is. Unlike a psychopath, you do have one. It's just buried deep beneath years of repeated reinforcement of people pleasing behaviors. If you get healthy and you let others get healthy so that they don't need you, you're going to be creating a completely different world, one that's very unfamiliar to you. You don't try to manage anyone. You let people live their own lives and you just do your thing, and that's actually what kindness is going to look like. You'll have to decide who you are rather than get that feedback from others, that validation. You're going to have to decide what's right and wrong, what's good and bad, what you like or dislike about your own behavior and your motives. And you're going to have to accept that that will not be mirrored by other people. It will be, but not the way you think. Like your enemies won't like the way you do things, and your friends will, true friends will. But often you'll do the right thing and it will get the kind of emotions that you think of as bad, even though they're just emotions. Sometimes you setting boundaries will make people angry and disappointed. Sometimes you going for what you want will make people jealous. Sometimes you'll do the wrong thing and it'll make people happy, and you'll realize that doesn't matter that they're happy. That wasn't right. I shouldn't have done that. Like participating in gossip, for example. Like, you're going to have to decide for yourself, and other people's reactions are really not going to be at all helpful to you. Right? Like, even if you really, really hurt someone's feelings, you still might have done the right thing. They're just not built to handle the truth, which is not your fault, not your job to fix. And they're just going to have to go through this. It's in their best interest to have this suffering because it will help make them tougher. This is the new kind of world that you'll have to enter, and it will feel very scary and unfamiliar at first, but it is a world of freedom. You'll also have to figure out a new reason for living. So controlling others and making them like you is your old purpose. So if you discard that, what's your new purpose going to be? And nobody else will be able to tell you what it is because that's the people-pleasing system, getting it from other people. You're going to have to figure out what your values are when they aren't about trying to make people feel happy. And I won't go into the how-to of that exactly. It's the kind of thing I coach people on. But the gist is, what do you admire in other people versus what do you hate when other people do? Because that tells you a bit about your own preferences for how people should behave, as in how you should behave. Do you look up to people who are courageous? Are you disgusted by people who are selfish? Or are you getting a sense of what you truly value there and what your purpose might be? What kind of impact you want to have on the world around you or on yourself? But if you first start with taking away the need to make people feel happy and go, well, what else is there other than that? What's a better reason for living than that? Start thinking about it. You'll have to quit the double standards. Stop doing things to people that you don't actually like them doing to you. A lot of your people pleasing is something you hate to receive. Like if you jump on people's problems and give them unsolicited advice, you hate it when people do that to you. If you're always cracking jokes and trying to make people laugh when they're concentrating on something serious, you hate it when people do it to you. Right? If you're constantly badgering people with questions, how are you? Okay? Is that fine? Are you doing all right? Can I get you something? And when someone does that to you, you're just like, oh my God, dude, you're suffocating me. I got this. That's a double standard. I guarantee you at least 50% of the people-pleasing stuff you do, you think you're being a good person, you wish people were more like this, but when it actually does happen to you, you don't like it, especially when it's done for the same reasons of people-pleasing. You don't like people having covert contracts, giving with a fishhook in it, trying to make you laugh so that you'll like them. You don't like it when they're doing that. So stop doing things you don't like receiving. How can someone respect you when you don't respect yourself? You don't actually live by the principles that you believe in. Respect is live and let live. Right? Are you letting people live or are you getting involved? And this is where we lead to the idea of interdependence rather than codependence. So the moment you try to make people need you, try to make people come to you to regulate their emotions, that's codependence. They can't survive without you. Interdependence is you're both fine on your own and you're even better together, but you don't need each other. Right? You support each other, not fix each other. You don't control each other. You add to each other. You provide value equally to each other. And so you're greater than the sum of your parts. But if one of you is off sick, the other one's fine. The relationship ends, you both move on quickly. There's no sense of dropping down and loss, right? It's a completely foreign concept to you, probably. This idea that you can create a symbiotic relationship with someone where both of you are also fine on your own and both of you have independent lives. Perhaps more importantly than anything else, you have to be okay with uncomfortable emotions. Realize the only reason you're uncomfortable about them is because you've been conditioned to believe that they're bad and wrong. You were told off for being angry as a kid, or you saw anger leading to violence when other people were angry, so you think anger's bad. Anger's not bad. Just your experience and your conditioning around it has made you think that. Anger is what leads to courage. Anger is behind creativity. Anger sets boundaries. Anger is assertive. These are all great things. Anger is your override for fear when fear is being inappropriate. You need anger. Anger's good. Anger's my favorite emotion now. It used to be my worst enemy and now it's my best friend. You're listening to this podcast because I'm angry about this topic, right? So you need to get your head straight. There are no bad emotions. They are all equally helpful, all equally important. They all serve vital functions, and you've been suppressing them in yourself and others for decades, holding people back and yourself from the benefits. Confident people bathe in uncomfortable emotions on a daily basis. They don't prevent them. If you think somebody's like, oh, that person's always certain and they never feel bad about themselves, you're either missing it or they're faking. A truly confident person has the whole range because there's no shame about any of their emotions. They're like, whatever I feel is what I feel. It's all good. I'll use it. It's to my advantage. They don't try to cure themselves of emotion. Only an unwell person does that. That being said, you will have to learn how to moderate and regulate your emotions. Your emotions are not decision-making like controllers, they're just sources of energy and power, and they need to be directed and used appropriately. And then when they're being inappropriate or there's too much, there needs to be systems designed to get them to the appropriate levels. And you have to do all of that yourself, not try and get someone else to like you so that you feel good about yourself. You're going to have to learn to self-soothe and regulate. And once you learn that, nobody can control you anymore because you won't need them for anything. And that's where we'll really lead to eventually is to learn to be unreactive and non-defensive, to make it that your life is not dependent on how other people respond to you and how they feel around you. Letting go completely of that desire to control others, to focus instead on controlling your own behavior to make sure it lines up with your values. And that way you can't be controlled by others. I mean, the ultimate I guess, solution to avoid being manipulated by others is to not need anything from them, not even an emotion, not even recognition, approval, nothing. You can't do anything with someone who doesn't need anything from you, right? Who's unaffected by you, who's unreactive. Manipulation requires a reaction, a dependence. So if you can manage your own shit, nobody else can manage you. But when it comes to finding a better reason to live, most people pleasers come from an innate goodness. They were good as kids. They liked other people. They want other people to have a good life. They feel sad and pity when they see somebody else being harmed or bullied and they see unfairness in the world. That was the starting position, which is why they became people pleasers and not true narcissists. But people pleasing is a mutated attempt at kindness that ends up being so distorted it's actually quite unkind. It's controlling and suffocating instead. But what if you kept kindness as the goal? You genuinely do want to be a good person by your own standards, but you're going to completely change the methodology so that you're actually effectively kind rather than just performative. So you can make it your purpose to actually gradually move along the spectrum from people pleasing to true, confident generosity. Understand you're not really a narcissist, but you're doing a lot of narcissistic traits, and it's time to just start reducing them over time and replacing them with confident traits. Um, to go back to that idea of arrested development, like you're going to go back to being 9 years old and you're going to drag yourself kicking and screaming through to full maturity to treat things as an adult rather than a kid trying to get love or a teenager trying to be rebellious. And it will be flawed. Your progress will be up and down. You're going to let go of perfectionism because that's just another people-pleasing narcissism trait. Instead, focus on just gradually, incrementally doing better every week, every month with ups and downs. Think of the difference from going from like being self-centered, covertly self-centered, kind of like secretly narcissistic while pretending to be all about others, and moving forward to being like centered in yourself, which means everything comes from you. It's not dependent on others. It's like the example in planes. You're going to get your mask on and get your oxygen going before you help the child next to you. So they're being helped by someone who's breathing rather than someone who's suffocating. Be a role model rather than someone who controls people. Show people how it's done. One of the most kindest things you can do is demonstrate a better way of living, right? Rather than doing things for people, telling them what to do. Give them an example that they can witness and learn from. So you'll be centered in your own development and just let people watch. That'll do more for them than you actually trying to actively intervene in their lives. Coming back to that point about how kindness is actually hard, one word you can keep in mind is service. Service is different from seeking approval. So kindness could come across as two ways. It can either be service or seeking approval, right? And that's the main difference. If you're serving someone, it's work, all right? It is a challenge. It's difficult to do. It's hard to get results. If it doesn't feel like that, then you're probably just people pleasing. One of the main things that differentiates the two is that with service, you get permission. You never do unsolicited support or advice. Someone must ask. Someone must say, yes, I need your help right now. And even then, you're still going to be like, well, I'm still going to try and get you to do it for yourself because that's what actually serves you. I'm going to teach you to fish rather than just give you a fish. And most people pleasers, there's no permission granted, there's no consent. They'll help you and you didn't even ask. You didn't say, I definitely want your help. They'll help you in a way that you didn't say, that's the way I want to be helped. Right? They impose help on you. They don't offer a service. And when you serve people truly, they may not appreciate you. I can tell you that as a coach. I upset a lot of my clients. They're upset with me. I got feedback just the other day that someone was mad at me because I thought he was delusional about what some of his friends thought of him. And that's fine, but him being offended by me saying that was a catalyst for him doing some changing behaviors that made his life better. So that's fine. He can hate me and improve his life because that's what real service is. If I need him to like me, then I'm not really serving him. I mean, it's amazing how often I'll call my clients a victim. They don't like hearing that. But it sits with them like this grain in their head that irritates them until finally they see that they're doing it. And then they do something about it. But they may never forgive me for calling them that. So true kindness really doesn't often get appreciated. In fact, if someone feels like they need to show you appreciation for it, it's probably because you've got a fish hook in it. They felt guilty about not appreciating and not reciprocating, which might just be in their head because of their conditioning. But can they just receive your gift without having to give anything in return? Can you make it feel like it's their birthday, like this is just for them, that they've earned it, that they deserve it? Can you let them know that you've already received your reward? When someone's like, I've got to thank you, say, no, no, I did this for me. I feel good about this. If you thanked me, I'll owe you one now. Like, let me just give this to you and don't ruin it by saying thank you. Like, can you do that? Can you push back on their attempt to reciprocate so you can make it really a gift rather than a manipulation? And sometimes service means doing what's right even though nobody else validates it. Being a father, for example, and a husband. There are times where I've got to do things for the family and my girls don't like it. I've had my wife and daughter against me, and I've just been like, nope, this is what we need. I'm going to go ahead with it. Hate me if you want for a little while. I'm doing what's in the best interest of the family. That's often what service looks like. We don't see that with politicians these days, but if we go back a couple of 100 years and look at some real leaders, we see people who are hated by the public because they did the right thing. These days, they just do it for the votes. Can you do the thing that's right even though nobody else agrees with you or believes you yet? Right? But you're sure of it. Can you just carry that disappointment and disapproval from people and just go, no, you'll see. I got this. So learn to give freely rather than keep score. All right. If you have to keep score, then you weren't really giving. But at the same time, you don't tolerate disrespect. You don't give to users and abusers. You don't need reciprocation, but you will use reciprocation as a measure of the quality of the person you're giving to. And you'll have a hierarchy that you give to. You're not going to waste time giving to people who abuse it and don't use it. You'll find the people where it has the most beneficial impact. It's like my coaching. I could coach anyone, but there are people who will not put it to use. And they happen to also often be the same kind of people who would never pay me for coaching. So it's not like I need to be paid to work with someone. I've also had paid clients who don't put my coaching to use, and I won't work with them. But it does help me differentiate who I should focus on. I want to coach people that has a big impact on their life, that they do a lot with the information in the sessions and transform their life. I'm going to do that not because it's like a reciprocation to me, but because I want to have an impact on the world, and that's the best way of doing it. Can you be honest about what you want, your intentions, your motives, your expectations? Rather than just being good and waiting for it to come to you, can you say, look, this is a transaction. I'm going to do this, and then you'll do this for me. We'll have an actual contract. We'll have an agreement, respectful reciprocation. There's nothing wrong with transactional giving. I should make that clear. It's when it's covert that it's a problem. There's nothing wrong with tit for tat. Like, I'll do this for you if you do this for me. In fact, it's one of the healthiest ways to learn to give freely is first go through a phase where you never give for free. Okay? This might sound contradictory, but if you want to shift from people pleasing to freely giving, you first need to learn how to negotiate. All right, to go like, okay, I will help you move house if you help me get my car to the mechanic. Fair? If you can learn to do that, then you'll realize, okay, I'm now detaching from this kind of debt that I put people in. I'm going to always have this clean slate with people. They never owe me anything. And once you get to the place where nobody ever owes you anything, because you always make a reciprocation and make sure that it works out, then you'll start to realize, hey, I don't actually need that reciprocation. I don't actually need to trade every time. So now you can actually start giving for free, but it will still be a clean slate. You won't be expecting anything owed. But first, make sure that you never give with a secret debt. Either debt's up front or you forgive it. There is no debt. So if you've given someone something, if you've been good to people and they haven't given you anything in return, but you didn't ask for anything in return, then they don't owe you shit. All right? You are not entitled to anything, not even a thank you card. That fucking meme I see all the time, like, good people are tired of being, good to ungrateful people. Why? Why do you need gratitude, you sneaky fuck? Just give them something. If you need gratitude, you weren't giving. Okay? If you're getting tired, it's because you're a people pleaser. Start being kind instead. Kindness will uplift you, will give you energy. If you're tired from being kind, you're not really being kind, you're being manipulative, and you're not getting what you wanted out of it. That's why you're tired. And if you're working with toxic people and constantly giving to the wrong people, that just tells you again that you're fucked up. That your selection system about who you have in your life and where you put your effort is skewed towards a certain unhealthy group of people. That's on you, not on them. There are healthy people out there who will naturally reciprocate, who will be kind to you without you having to do something in return. Those people exist, but you repel them at the moment. Why? You got to ask yourself that question. So, hopefully, that slapped somebody in the face and gave them the wake up call that saved my life and turned me around. Because what I'm saying here is yes, you can be a good person, but no, that's not what you are yet. Okay? You're much closer to being a narcissist. And if you don't like that, good. Fucking change it. Okay? You can. But you're going to have to completely rewrite your belief system. Okay? If you need help with that, get in touch, dan@brojo.org. Thank you so much for listening. Please share this around if there's someone who needs to hear it, and I'll see you next time.